Alright, and thank you for viewing the video. This is an unboxing of the Yamaha MG10XU mixing console. And we're going to go ahead. I went ahead and took this off camera and got the side open. So let's go ahead and pull it out. It's meant to be a 10-channel board, which, of course, very beginning of it, it's put this to the side. We've got the AC adapter, which is got kind of a bigger metal connector on the end of it, which kind of standard for these sorts of boards, and also seems like it's a fairly long cable. And my experience, I perform live, and I use one of these boards sitting on top of a kind of an all-in-one amplifier, and the long cable. In fact, let's go ahead and pull this out of its bag, have a quick look at it, so I can give you a feel for how long this cable is, because this in particular is kind of a chunk. It's fairly heavy, and my experience is that sometimes those things fall on the floor, so the longer cable you have, the better. So it's being a little difficult. So now we got this thing apart, and I wanted to kind of give you a feel for how long that cable is, because as I say, that has come in handy for me in the past, because I've needed to put that up on top of an amplifier, and it's a little bit less likely that the thing's going to hit the floor. So there's the board itself. We'll lay it aside for a second. Also comes with a user manual, and go ahead and have a quick look at that and see what it is they've given us there. And pop this open, and it looks like that's kind of a quick start guide. Gives you a little rundown of the connections in the channel. It's pretty standard for this sort of electronic gear. And they give you an access code to download a copy of Cubase, which this is a set of safety instructions in various languages. Just the precautions, water warning, fire warning, some fairly standard stuff. Sheet of technical specifications. Page they're calling the owner's manual, and duplicate of that in another language. It looks like we got French, Spanish, and of course English. So let's go ahead and pull the covering off the board here. Have a good look. Okay, let's have a look at this channel by channel. That's probably the simplest way to do it. Of course, it's got 4 Canon plug channels, so let's go down channel 1. And I say Canon plug channels, this has a Canon plug and XLR are interchangeable terms for mic cable, basically. So this has a combination mic cable, 1/4 inch input on each of these 4 channels, channel 1 there. It's got a pad of 26 dB pad, so you can attenuate, you can kind of dampen the inbound signal a little bit. High pass filter, or ADZ, which basically, my understanding of that, it's going to take off the high end a little bit. It's got gain for each channel, which is kind of an overall control over the strength of the input. And to me, one big selling point of this board is it has compression, which is really useful for vocals if you're not familiar with how compression works. I don't know the circuitry on this. A lot of times it's termed a compressor limiter. And long story short, it just evens out the dynamic peaks and valleys and vocals. And this particular model, this particular board model has one for 2 channels. So the application that this board will be used in is for an acoustic duo with 2 vocals, so that's ideal. Have high, mid, and low EQ, and those don't look sweepable. It looks like it's a shelving EQ, if you're familiar with that terminology. It's a, let's see, I don't, that's probably too small to see. The high will give you 10 hertz, either plus or minus 15. The mid-range is 2.5 kilohertz, plus or minus 15, and lows 100 hertz, plus or minus 15. The 2.5 is kind of somewhere around the sibilants and vocals, like the S's and so forth. And this board has built-in effects, which for the acoustic duo application we're going to use it for as a pretty good selling point. And over here it's got the controls for that. It's got program, which is going to help you choose between these different sorts of effects that it has. It has 2 hall effects, 1, 2 room effects for reverb, a reverb stage effect, a reverb plate, which I personally find pretty useful. That's a pretty consistent. It's not like a whole lot of echo or reverb, but it's pretty consistent. It just adds just a touch. Drum ambience, which might be useful with the drum machine. Gated reverb, which I found useful on background vocals. It's got a delay, a vocal echo, karaoke. I'm not familiar with how that sounds. A flanger and a phaser, and a chorus, which just depending on your application for the board, those to me are generally kind of useful guitar effects. Symphonic, and I'm not familiar with. Tremolo is whammy bar type effect. Auto wah, I'm not familiar with. Radio voice is probably something with the mid-range accentuated, which might be useful. Distortion, not sure of the application on that. And pitch change, which I'm not familiar with exactly how that would work on this board, but kind of an interesting effect to be there. The parameter is minimum and maximum, which gives you control over the amount of effect that you have. So let's go back over to the channel. We've got a pan control, which is left and right, which is stereo left, stereo right, so you can place the signal on the spectrum from left to right, and then the level, just the volume control. It's got a peak indicator on each channel. Peak gets in the red. From my experience, if the peak gets in the red, back the gain off just a little bit on whatever the channel is till you get there, so you can keep your balance between instruments the same. One thing I'm noticing in this unboxing is that most of the pots, actually these pots aren't too bad, but the gain pots are a little loose in there. I would have hoped they would have been a little more solid. But to come over to the bus, we've got a foot switch on off, which for the acoustic duo application that this board will be used for is very handy. You can have quite a bit of effects on your singing vocals, and then if you need to speak to the crowd, you can hit a foot switch. They don't include a foot switch in this, but I'm certain Yamaha makes one. I know Boss makes a latching style foot switch, which you can use with that. Line level unbalanced, left and right out. In for channel 5 and 6, 7 and 8, 9 and 10. So you have line level inputs for channels 5 through 10, and you have XLR inputs, balance lines for 1 through 4. So we have a monitor out, which which probably down in the bus you can assign that to the monitor out. It'll give you a mix there. The stereo out, it's got 1/4 inch, and it's also got Canon plugs. Once again, I kind of go back and forth between Canon plugs and XLR, but I found that's handy. In fact, that was the big selling point on this board, because I'm an acoustic guitarist and I use a direct box, which brings my guitar signal to an XLR out, which can go into the board. It can leave the board as XLR balanced and go into the amplifier that we're using as my cable as XLR balanced, and in my mind that helps my guitar signal out quite a bit. It's got a headphone jack, have either line or USB, which I'm certain assigns the jack in the back. Effects return is here. Effects on or off. Switch there. Then looks like you have some control over what channel 10 does in terms of whether it goes to mono or stereo. Monitor or phones. So you do have a switch there where I'm assuming the signal will be present on the monitor outs or at the phones, and then you have just an overall level. So that's it, and that's all that came in the package. If you liked this video, please like it here on the page and make a comment and subscribe to the channel. Thanks much. Have a good night or day.